Good morning. It's wonderful to see all of you out there. And welcome to our folks who are watching online also. Thank you for bringing your devotion and your energy to join with us in this Sunday morning service. My name is Rammurti. This is my wife Sita. By divine grace, we are your ministers this morning. A few weeks ago, Asha was talking to some of the ministers and light bearers, giving some tips on how to do Sunday service. And one of her points was that it is really best, especially in a Sunday service, if you don't talk about things that you don't have personal experience with yourself, that you've not really lived yourself. And then just week before last, Devi and Jyotish were here, and Devi was addressing the same topic, and she said, until you have actually had personal experience with the subject, it's best just to talk about those things that you do have personal experience with, because then you can be really sincere. And so then I got the topic of the eternal now. And I was afraid there might be a lot of sincere silence this morning. But I have tried to pick it up from a thread that we can look at with a little personal experience. I mean, what a topic. Just the subject, just the phrase eternal now itself is oxymoronic. They're like opposites. Here we have this present moment, this now that never started because it was always in existence and will never end because it's always going to be in existence. I mean, how do we wrap our minds around a concept like that? But Yogananda said, in truth, there is no evolution, there's no progress, there's no change over time, because at whatever point we are, whatever experience we're having, that's all that's existing in God's consciousness right then, that there's only that one reality. And it always has been, and it always will be. And this is how, or maybe I should say where, or maybe I should say when, the masters live in this consciousness. There's no need for them to travel to another country to see what the culture is like there, or the people there, because they are already there. There's no need for them to have a disciple come in and tell the master or the guru their feelings or their emotions, because the master already knows that. Yogananda said that there was not a single thought in any of his disciples' minds that he was not aware of. Of course, he was actually aware of the thoughts of everyone, but he usually didn't intrude unless he was invited, like a disciple, asking him to work with them. This is a great story many of you will have heard, but when they were sprucing up the facilities in Mount Washington years ago, a young disciple named Oliver Rogers was assigned to paint a certain room that had been quite a bit of disrepair, and so he was in there probably prepping for the paint job, perhaps wondering why he had been assigned to do it by himself. And he was just beginning to work on it. He hadn't even gone out and bought the paint for the job yet. And here come Yogananda and his number one male disciple, Rajarsi Janakananda, strolling in bliss, coming into the room. And Master looks at this room with the paint peeling and all, not even prepped yet, and says, "Look, Rajarsi, how beautiful. And to think that he painted it all by himself." And Rajarsi looked at the unpainted walls and then gave Oliver a smile. And, well, for one thing, Oliver knew he was going to be painting that all by himself. But that's the kind of consciousness that the masters have, not confined by time or by space, And it's very challenging for us to fathom, just to fathom this concept, let alone have any experience with it. But if we think of the eternal now as the dimension of spirit, the location of superconsciousness, then our main connection with that is to figure out how we can get there. What can we do? What can we do in our personal lives that will take us closer to it? And that may be more profitable for us to ponder than trying to see if we can understand it when we're not there. So I thought the thread I'd pick it up by today is looking at the advice that Jesus and Krishna gave us on how to do that, almost as though we had never heard it before, just to try to take it in and see what's being said. So Jesus talked about the same concept, the eternal now, when he said fields are all ready to go. They are white unto harvest now. Jesus, like most masters, occasionally had trouble getting his disciples to really understand what he was trying to convey to them. And just before this passage that was read to us, there's another little section I'll refer to. The disciples and Jesus are out in the countryside. They've come out from the city, probably, it doesn't say why, but probably to escape the crowds and the press that he so often had. So they're out there in the countryside, which in that area of the world can be pretty barren, so they had to bring all their supplies with them. And Jesus is teaching them and working with them, instructing them. And the disciples pretty soon become worried because they've been out there a long time and Jesus hasn't eaten anything. And so they get busy among themselves as people who have mundane affairs uppermost in their mind and are wondering how they can get him to eat because he seems intent on just teaching them. So finally they go to him and say, "Master, you must eat." And Jesus says, I have food, I have sustenance, I have nourishment that you don't know about, apparently. And then they turn to each other and say, well, what's going on here? We're pretty sure he hasn't eaten, or as Swami humorously refers to it, secreted a sandwich someplace on his person before they came out there. So what is going on with them? And Jesus says to them, I have food that you don't know about. You are so intent on these things that are earthbound and solid, you don't understand that all the sustenance I need is to do what my Father in heaven is telling me to do, to be about his business, to be on this mission that I have here, to accomplish that work. That's all I need. I don't need any food in the way you're talking about, in the way you mean. And I think they didn't get it. But Jesus goes on in this passage as if to say, okay, while I'm talking about things that you're not getting, let me bring up another one. And he says, please don't tell me how long it's going to take to accomplish something from your own perspective. Don't tell me that it's going to take 4 months from the time you plant the seed, for example, until that harvest is ready. Our people on the farm might like some of these tips from Jesus if we could get them transferred. Don't tell me that we have to wait for everything, for nature to always take its course, that everything has to go through this required cycle. You leave no room for spirit when you're tied to this type of process. And where were you when I was creating all these miracles? You've been with me, you've seen these marvelous things, and still you think that they're not things beyond your kin right now, beyond the normal, predictable flow that you're used to. And then he says, listen to me, the fields are ripe now. It's ready. It can be harvested immediately. So that field that he's referring to, which is God consciousness, lives in eternal maturation. It doesn't have anywhere to go. It doesn't have to grow anymore before we can access it for ourselves. Now, we might have to grow some more, but it doesn't have to change. Yogananda wrote that people require time to find God only because of their bondage to time consciousness. Otherwise, he said, God is always with us. He will never be less with us than he is now, and he will never be more with us than he is now, which kind of sounds disappointing when you take that last part too much, that we're never going to have more than we do right now. But that is not his point. That's not what he's saying. He's saying we have God fully. We just need to wake up and realize it and embrace it. So next, Jesus tells his disciples what to do about this situation. And he says, lift up your eyes. Now, it's important and interesting, I think, to look very specifically at the words that Jesus used when he said lift up his eyes. Because he's saying your divine harvest is already, and all you have to go is get it. But somehow, this interpretation, this meaning of these words has been lost from Christianity at large. And if we take a look at what's happening today with translations of the Bible, it's easy to see how over the centuries this can get a little vague or distorted, and not this teaching alone. But today, just in the last 20 years or so, some of the modern translations of the Bible have taken this phrase, lift up your eyes. And now, when you read in the Bible, here's some examples of what different translations say. Some say, look. Some say, look around you. Lift up your eyes and look around you. Open your eyes. Open your eyes and look. They get some variety at least. And one says, take a good look. And the one that kind of fits with our teaching, but still is mistaken, is wake up and look around you. Well, this, of course, is good advice, but gone is the idea of lifting up your eyes, which is, of course, the core of what Jesus is saying here. He's saying, look up and see the light. And he knew this both from his knowledge of Jewish scriptures, because the psalmist talks about lifting up your eyes and seeing God. In Daniel, there's this great passage where Daniel lifts up his eyes and has this vision of this being of light. So it's a part of his tradition. And of course, and perhaps more importantly, he knew about this because he experienced it himself. Because during the states of deep spiritual awareness, our eyes are lifted up. In fact, Swami talks about them being lifted up automatically. And if the spiritual state is deep enough, you don't happen to have your eyes up, they'll be forced up. And in high states, locked there. I have a little experience, a little nibble with what Swami's talking about here. Years ago at Ananda, I think it was probably 1981, in those days, the Ananda Village, what's now Ananda Village, would go into town on the 4th of July and create kind of a fair and a celebration that the people in Nevada City and Nevada County could come. It was part of our sort of PR work with the surrounding community. And it would always be in a bare area, fairground, or a park area, and we would set up big posts all tied with guy wires and string a cable all around through all the posts so that we could, hang tents from there or other things, because there was nothing above. So I was helping this particular 4th of July setup, and I was up on a ladder, 15 feet or so up off the ground, and the top of the ladder was against one of these cables that was going from post to post. And one of the guy wires that was holding up the post that I was closest to snapped. And as you might expect, that post went down, and the cable went down, and the ladder went down, and then I went down. The post came back up and everything was fine, but Divine Mother planned it so my ladder would just slip off the cable before it righted itself. And down I went on a pretty long fall. And I got a little busted up when I was lying there. This arm went like this, and I had to operate and get a bunch of bone chips out and all from the elbow. But basically I had a dislocated arm and very badly bruised knees and a few other places bruised. But what's important about this story is that the moment I landed, my consciousness was just forced right to this point. Now, what I should tell you that's significant is for the previous 6 or 8 weeks, I had been doing a lot of japa. Japa is where you take a phrase, a mantra, and you repeat it again and again. And I had been doing japa, just a very simple phrase, Om Guru, right here at the point between my eyebrows, at least on some days for a few hours, because my goal was that every moment I had when I didn't have to use my mind in a way that would prevent me from doing my mantra, I would be right there doing it. I'd been at Ananda about 4 years, and I really hadn't done japa since the introductory apprentice program where we taught how to do it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. Well, my consciousness was just pulled right here. I had nothing to do with it. And all of a sudden, right here, it started pulsing. Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru. In my mind, with me having no intention, no conscious control over it. Well, the ambulance came and got me and hauled me off, and I'm in the ambulance, and I'm still, poof, poof, poof. It was really amazing, let me tell you, because I wasn't doing anything, but everything, all of my awareness was right here. I mean, I didn't even feel pain. I kind of knew that there was something out there that ought to be hurting, but I wasn't experiencing it. So, as a little aside, I'm going in the ambulance, and in the wall between where the patient and the EMT people were that divides from them to the drivers, there were various things attached up on that wall. And one of them was a bucket that was secured up there, or supposed to be secured. So I'm down here just having a great time with my Om Guru, and the EMT people were very concerned about me, but I was fine. And then all of a sudden, there's this explosion right here, and a pain I actually did feel. And my only explanation is that whatever was going on at my point between the eyebrows was so intense that it had magnetized the bucket off the wall, and the rim hit me right there. Well, the poor people in the ambulance, they were very upset and concerned. I could just see them thinking, suit, lawsuit, oh no. But it just intensified the experience. So there's a little nibble at what can happen just from a few weeks of really concentrating right here at this point. Well, in Jesus' day, he couldn't really address these kind of concepts bluntly or directly and clearly to the masses. He did not want to create confusion in people's minds. And this is one reason that well-known phrase about don't give what is holy to dogs nor cast your pearl before swine was stated by Jesus, because these were teachings that were reserved for his disciples, closer devotees that followed him, and not for everyone. And it's understandable, because if you're familiar with the yogic concept of history at all, we have this cycle. And Jesus was very close to the bottom, at the time that he lived, was very close to the bottom of that cycle. And so in what we call Kali Yuga, the consciousness of people was not at a level where he could just be distributing these more esoteric teachings broadly. The core of this, he passed on to his disciples. And this includes the idea of the eternal now and the lifting up of the eyes, but also it includes what happens once you keep your eyes there for a while, what you will see, what you will experience. And we find him talking about that in the Sermon on the Mount. In the Sermon on the Mount is where he gives a fairly explicit statement of what lifting up the eyes will do, where he says, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body will be filled with light. Well, our editors and copiers and whatnot have been hard at work again. They're supposed to be translators and copiers, but I think there's some editing going on. And here, the eye being single is changed, again in these modern translations, to the eye being good, the eye being healthy, the eye being sound, clear, unclouded, unblurred, and a great one, if you look at people and want to help them, then your body will be full of light. And again, these are all good things, but where's the teachings? Where's the esoteric teachings that Jesus was really trying to communicate? Jesus knew the same teachings and similar techniques as those that have been brought to us by our other masters in these last 2 centuries. So now let's go over and look and see what Krishna said. Okay, Krishna lived and taught in India at a higher point in this cycle. In fact, he lived and taught at just about the same time we are right now, just about 100 years or so off. And not only is it about the same so that he could teach more clearly, but at that time he was in what we call Dwapara Yuga, the one higher than Kali Yuga, but it was in descending Dwapara Yuga. So what that means is that the people that were listening to Krishna, that lived at his time, had a tradition of these higher teachings. So here we find in our world right now, these are still a bit new, although they're getting better known. For example, what's today? International Yoga Day today. Amazing. I mean, of course, as a kid, I hadn't even heard of yoga. Now there's an international day for it all around us. And this is because we're in an ascending part of the cycle, and so we don't have a tradition of these teachings. But the consciousness that we have and the consciousness of the people in Krishna's time was approximately the same. So once we hear about the teachings now, we get it, as they, of course, got it, but then it had been passed down to them as part of their heritage. So here we have pretty specific instructions about what to do. As Rita read, hold the spine firm, the neck, the head erect and motionless. And in addition to focusing the eye, a very important point, don't let your eyes move away, which is so simple and easy to say, but most of us know is a little harder to do. So the mind, when deeply concentrated, has the opportunity then to see, at this point between the eyebrows, what we call the spiritual eye. Yogis, basing their teachings on their own personal experience, teach that this is the point of ecstasy. It is the point, the doorway of spiritual vision, the portal to truth. So it's the key to connecting our consciousness to superconsciousness, to spirit. And interestingly, it's the seat of the guru. So whatever master you're connected to, if you will focus and call on him at the point between the eyebrow, you will receive his blessing. You will get his help. Now, there are a variety of names for this: the Christ Center, the Christ Consciousness Center, the Krishna Consciousness Center, the Kutastha Chaitanya, and other names. And there are many different aspects, many ways we could approach the spiritual eye. But I'm going to say just a couple of words at least about one which is very interesting and could be a whole series of classes, let alone Sunday sermon, which is the physiological aspect of it. We're here in the fore area of the brain, and it is the most recently acquired part of the brain, speaking evolutionally. It is the most recently, so it's the thing that distances us the most, mankind, from lower animals. And with modern technology, we've started doing many different kinds of brain studies. And one of them is imaging. So we can now image the activity that is going on in the brain. And when we do this kind of meditation that lights up, that occurs in the forepart of the brain, then these mounds up here, they just light up. You can see it right on the screen. So now someone else can tell you're really meditating or not. I don't know if that's good or bad, as well as yourself, because there are visual images now that indicate it. Also, there are studies in neuroplasticity, which, 35 years ago or so, they thought the brain was finished developing in your early 20s. But we know now that that is not the case. The brain continues to be plastic, to be open, to be changed, to continue growing. And so when we meditate, there are a lot of things that are going on, but of significant interest is the fact that in the forepart of the brain, when we meditate, more brain cells are being developed and more nerve cells are being developed. While in the back part of the brain, the type of the brain that all animals have and was earlier on the evolutionary continuum, that they are decreased. So actually physiologically we see that meditation, that focusing right here, I shouldn't say meditations, but specifically focusing right here changes the infrastructure of our brain. And now we know that. Dwapara Yuga, we're learning more and more about why the sages have told us for centuries, millennia, we should be doing these things. It's also important to realize that the spiritual eye is a part of every human being. Just like the brain is a part of every human being. It's not something that some people see because they have it and other people don't see because they don't have it. It's there. It's more essential than other things. We could lose all of our limbs and have them take out several organs and we would still be us and we still would have that connection. And of course the body could go away completely and we would still have our consciousness. It's not uncommon for people who are new to the yogic teachings. They see an artist depiction or they come to a class about it or they just walk in this room and look up here and will say, oh, that's what that was. Oh, I've seen that 2 or 3 times during my life. And usually when they were especially still or calm or had some intense experience that they reacted to by calming down or on the way to sleep is another common one. Swami Kriyananda, who's the founder of Ananda, as a child would see the spiritual eye as he went to sleep every night. He would see the light. He would see the light as he went to sleep every night. And he just thought that was the way you went to sleep. You crawled into bed and you calmed down after the day and you looked up and, oh, there was the light again. And it would then just lull him to sleep. And then not until he became a teenager or a late adolescent did he realize, everybody else thinks this is kind of weird. I think I'm just going to keep this to myself. And by not developing it, he actually lost that from his experience going to bed at night until he found Master and started meditating again. And then he was right there. And interesting for our subject, the eternal now, he said, it was like I never left it. I saw it again just like I had seen it the last time I saw it as a child. We should consider this spiritual eye as the most important part of our body. Jyotish, I've heard him say this, ask this question. If you were in prison and you were wanting parole or working for parole, what would the most important part of that prison be? The exit door. That's what you're going to fantasize about and visualize and imagine yourself going out of. Now, we're not exactly in prison. It's a little more like house arrest, or maybe it's planet arrest that we're in. We're kind of stuck here and we can't get out, but there is a door. There is a way that we can move forward. Deep meditation actually resembles the death experience. There's one very important exception to that, and that is that we can bring ourselves back at will, of course, from meditation. The other is permanent. And we see this in the Bible again. I kind of got on this track of seeing where we could find these things in the Bible. St. Paul was writing to the people in Corinth. You know, early Christianity was like Ananda. It was based on communities. They had these communities around the northern Mediterranean. So he was writing to the community in Corinth. And he said, I assure you by the certainty of Jesus Christ that we all possess, I die daily. Now, it might not be obvious to everyone, but for those of us with our teachings at hand, that's what he was talking about. He was having that same superconscious experience that one has when you die. Except, of course, he was coming back to continue his work of spreading Christ's teachings. Yogananda said, the most important thing on the spiritual path, although I think he said that about several things, but the most important thing on the spiritual path, the most important thing towards merging with God, is to live from the point between the eyebrows. Whatever we're doing, whatever situation we find ourselves in, to the degree we can bring our consciousness and awareness to the point between the eyebrows, to that degree we can connect with God and bring God and superconsciousness into that moment of our lives right then. So those of us who sincerely want to know God will follow in the footsteps of the masters who have this experience on a daily basis. All of us as spiritual aspirants, at whatever point we now find ourselves on the spiritual path, this is the number one thing to include in the way we think about our lives and live our lives and use our time. Thus we can hasten the coming of ecstasy's dawn and the eventual coming of complete freedom in God. Just imagine our souls soaring upward, up that tunnel, through the tunnel of the subtle spine, out through the spiritual eye, into the infinite freedom of spirit and the full experience of the eternal now. God richly bless you all.